I seen I had a good view. I asked a fella to give me a hand and he said he would, so he ended up building it.
Belfast is a battlefield. Since 1969, fear has forced thousands of Catholics and Protestants living in mixed areas of the city to leave their homes and seek refuge within their own communities. 10,000 houses stand empty, because in Belfast, houses are more than just places to live in. They're territory to defend, positions to take.
What started as 10 sheets across the road has ended with around 80 peace walls across Belfast.
I had a cracking view all over Belfast, even down it onto the loch. That's all away now because of the greenery.
The meeting had been called at the suggestion of the security forces to assess the constant danger posed by the conflict in the housing field in Belfast.
The NIO did take a specific interest in the security implications. Housing became very territorial and there was clearly no appetite for mixed housing.
What is needed is not interference in the policy-making system, but practical working level consultation between the housing planners and those with security concerns.
Houses were burnt down specifically by the Protestant occupiers because they were not going to allow them to be occupied by Catholics. Security is a complicated issue. The army and the police were being shot at. There were riots. Any new development would have been referred for security comment.
The problem could be alleviated by the creation of a neutral zone, industrial development, welfare buildings, dual carriageway, or creation of fencing.
It's Northern Ireland. What has changed over those years? Relatively little. I think the population remains fairly segregated. It won't ever be anything different.
It's peaceful at night, sitting on it and just having a wee glass of wine. Someone would probably say, well, who do you think you are living in a council estate with a balcony and you're just jealous because you never thought of it and you haven't got the view I have. I don't have a view. So that's it.
What's it like living up here?
Well, ups and downs, and I do like it. So we do, and I love walking in the dam and stuff, and I love hanging with my friends around here and stuff.
And have you lived here long?
Yeah, I've lived here my whole life.
And do you have a lot of family in the area?
Well, no, most of them live up in Antrim and stuff. Oh, I have my auntie who lives down there, and that's it.
Is this your brother?
Yes, my brother Adam.
Adam, do you like living up here?
Kinda. It's alright. I've had areas better areas and really bad.
I found out there are two stories about how Woodfill got its name. The first one is that in Irish, Leg O'Neill is the Valley of the Wolf. The other said that the last wolf in the north of Ireland was killed here. Views from Woodfill are absolutely spectacular. And if you can just imagine standing there at the turn of the century and you can see all of Belfast, the loch, The fields as far as anyone can see, absolutely beautiful views, absolutely gorgeous walks.
You can see the ships coming in, be it the tall ships, the cruise liners. On a good day, you can see as far as Scotland with the naked eye.
I seen I had a good view. I asked a fella to give me a hand and he said he would, so I ended up building it. Cracking view all over Belfast, down it onto the loch. That's all away now because of the greenery. When everything dies back, you can still see parts of what you used to be able to see.
Well, the relationships were good. There was no problem about relationships. There wasn't the same trouble in this area as what you would have found, say, in Ardoyne or other parts of the town. People wanted peace here, put it that way. They wanted peace everywhere, for that matter, you know.
The decision to put these hidden barriers in place can be traced back to two significant processes unexpectedly coming together between 1976 and 1977. On the one hand, there was the dilapidated state of Belfast housing stock. The dense networks of terraced row housing which characterised the inner city had been in existence since the late 19th century. By 1976 were deemed to be the worst housing stock in Western Europe. On the other hand, there was the conflict that was playing out on those streets and in those houses.
The one issue that I can remember which really accelerated things was when Farrington Gardens and Velsheda Park in the Protestant part of Ardoyne, those houses were burnt down specifically by the Protestant occupiers because they were not going to allow them to be occupied by Catholics. So housing became very, very territorial, and there was clearly no appetite for mixed housing. And of course, Belfast being, the streets were 2 up, 2 down houses, it was very easy to access those even for shooting at the security forces.
The housing executive were well advanced in the planning of a major redevelopment scheme in the Ligoniel to house Roman Catholic families. The Protestant Squires Hill estate consisted of private housing, and the residents were taking a firm line against the scheme. If Roman Catholic houses were built as far as the edge of Squires Hill estate, a point of conflict would be established, thus creating a confrontation zone, or the estate would become a no man's land.
Ligoniel was always a bit further out from North Belfast, and always had its own complex problems.
People were getting a bit uneasy. Now, there wasn't much trouble up here until the early 70s, and that's when it all kicked off up here. The trouble started. Certain people come over at night to attack the houses in Ligoniel. There was a guy, was a friend of ours. We actually knew the guy, and he was killed as he was going to work up the hill there.
One of the things I would have felt, which I can understand it clearly, they looked from the point of view, apart from the risks involved during the Troubles, but they thought their own houses would have dropped in value, which is normal for people to think. They don't want to get an executive house built beside them.
As you will know, plans for the development of a new housing estate at Ligoniel have already caused some problems. The residents of Squires Hill, who are Protestant private owners, held a meeting last night. Feelings were running high against the department. The residents are worried that the new estate will be used as an overspill for the new lodge. They also feel that the non-private housing will reduce the value of their properties. They claim that their views have not been heard fully, nor given sufficient weight. Mr. Carsey warned that Ligoniel was part of a pattern. Protestant areas would be made over increasingly to Catholics.
So the NIO did get very much involved in looking at the problems of any new development within Belfast, any redevelopment, and how you would deal with bricked up houses in certain areas. And in many cases, there wasn't a solution. You had to leave some of the areas to become derelict because of the security implications.
So we have this dilemma. How to stop large and depopulating Protestant territories from shrinking in size, and smaller but overcrowded Catholic territories from growing in size at their expense. But how do we do this in a way that doesn't reveal that there is political interference in housing policies that are supposed to be completely apolitical and completely objective? Well, you do it in secret. You keep it hidden.
Interfaces became critical from the security point of view when two working class estates came within stone-throwing distance of each other. The problem could be alleviated by the creation of a neutral zone. Industrial development or the construction of amenity or welfare buildings, the creation of a wide open space, dual carriageway or creation of fencing would at least serve to separate hostile communities.
The army, more or less, the way they designed the whole thing, because I couldn't realise the way they were thinking at the time. At that time, soldiers were being killed in other parts of the town. So they could see it if you designed the houses in such a way that it might be easier for them to catch someone. If there's a sniper, they're out to get them.
We all knew that the MOD was doing this because they were doing it in every other area, to box places off. So if there's anybody did anything wrong, they were trying to catch them easy enough.
In accordance with the Minister's wishes, the Housing Executive and the Planning Service explored the question of providing some separation between the new development and the owner-occupied houses. There should be particularly heavy planting to a minimum depth of 12 metres in the proposed landscape strip between the two developments. The relevant executive houses should not face towards the private development, and there should be no access whatever, vehicular or pedestrian, between the two developments.
First, we have the houses. Well, you can't just start to turn houses around when the layout already has planning approval. But what you can do instead is rub out living room and front garden and write in kitchen and backyard.
There was talk, I would say late 90s, about turning some of the houses around. When you come to visit someone, the chances are you're going to finish up at the rear of the properties. So people would normally get out of the car or whatever, go through the back garden and into the kitchen.
Second, we have the trees. Here we have people who should be neighbours, but where the 12 metres of trees that have been placed between them means that the walk from door to door is actually 1.5 miles.
There's very much a kind of view that the people from Squires Hill like it because of those concerns of, are we going to be attacked? Are we going to have, some kind of a vandalism or, something thrown over at us?
It's almost a no man's land that nobody's going to claim for the sake of maintaining it. Some people have maintained it themselves. Certainly from the Legganeel end, the people would be glad to see it, reduced in height or taken away altogether.
And then we have the school football pitches, which were deliberately abandoned in order to provide a physical buffer between Catholic and Protestant areas.
The concern was that it could become an area where there would be interface tensions, where young people would get together and fight with each other because of their religions. So there was a kind of an abandonment of any kind of shared space, which that would have been historically.
This has been a contentious area for a long time. There used to be running battles here. A lot of the houses, metal guards on the windows to stop them being attacked and broken. But it is really a no man's land.
And it's in this moment where these two processes then come together. First, in keeping with initiatives that were already underway in other former industrial cities such as Glasgow and Liverpool, the government announced a sweeping programme of housing development for Belfast in 1977. But shortly thereafter, they also established a confidential security committee, and its role was to work behind the scenes and oversee how these proposals could be shaped and refined for implementation in contentious areas of Belfast.
Security is a complicated issue. For example, if you had, and you had the troubles, the army and the police were being shot at, there were riots, it was clearly important for the security forces to be able to get into and to get out of each area. And so any new development would have been referred for security comment.
At the time, whenever the houses were being built, people were just thought, oh, this is great, we're going to get new housing, until they found out exactly how they were going to be built.
It does keep the areas separate, but it created that sort of permanent barrier between them. So there's very little, almost no sort of integration or work or anything, lives crossing paths between Ligoniel and Squires Hill.
The Squires Hill case illustrates our current shortcomings. Evidently, security advice ought to be taken while the options are still open. A sufficiently early consultation could provide many ameliorations and improvements of a scheme which the security forces intrinsically disliked. What is needed is not interference in the policy-making system, but practical working level consultation between the housing planners and those with security concerns. A committee consisting of those present would be the most suitable forum.
We might know about the peace walls. They are obvious for everybody to see. But we don't know about the hidden barriers that were put in place. They are all the more problematic because they are formed from everyday buildings and everyday spaces. So much so that today they effectively hide in plain sight.
It's Northern Ireland. What has changed over those years? Relatively little. I think the population remains fairly segregated. It won't ever be anything different.
It's peaceful at night, sitting on it and just having a wee glass of wine. Someone would probably say, well, who do you think you are, living in a council estate with a balcony and you're just jealous because you never thought of it and you haven't got the view I have. I don't have a view. So that's it.